Hey guys, this is Will. Welcome to my first episode of Survivor History. This one's going to be on Borneo, otherwise known as Season 1 of Survivor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a rundown of each contestant and how they did. Um, Now, please forgive me if I forget some things because it's been a long time since I've watched the season. I watched it before I knew exactly what I was going to do with the YouTube channel, so it might be a little rough. And I might need to go back and reference a few things. That's why I have my phone here, just in case I forget everyone's name. So, first you know, let's deal with the location. It Borneo wasn't too rainy, but wasn't too too sunny either. I mean, they were given rain ponchos and things like that, which was okay because um, you know it's not as worse as some seasons' weather conditions. So I don't think the weather really played a factor into this season very much. Um, I do find it interesting that before I get started with the contestants and everything, their strategies in the season were basically to mainly survive, and I'm going to put this in as a start of a playlist from seasons 1 through 7 that were basically the survival seasons. And what I mean by that is the seasons that were more focused on surviving than actually playing the game strategically. And I'm not saying some people didn't play the game strategically. I'm just saying that pre-merge especially, you know, it was more focused on surviving. And I think you'll see that by who was voted out and what strategic plays they made. Um, so the first person voted out was let me get to it. Um, Sonia. Um, Sorry for the delay there. I had to look at my phone. Um, so she was voted out mostly because she was old. For no other reason. I mean, you at the start of this game, and even like in the seasons now, you have to make sure your tribe's strong. Otherwise, you're not going to last very long. And that, even though it's changed in the reasons, why for that, it really hasn't gotten any easier for someone from 63 years of age to actually get fun of this game. And you know, and it's not very good being the first voted out. I can I can guarantee you that, but it's not bad or not terrible that she was the first one. You know, I don't really remember her because she was the first one, but she was nice and respectful and was graceful for being the first one voted out, which I find to be respectful. And then you have BB, which he didn't also get very far because of his age. I mean, he's 64, so I mean, then again, he's even older than Sonya at that point. So it's very interesting how he has a military background, and because this nobody knows how to play the show yet because this is the first season. He's basically just trying to build camp and and work as hard as he can, but he's not really you know making connections with the other people, having conversations with them, or anything of that matter, which is really important in Survivor. If you can't make connections, you're not going to last long. It doesn't matter if you're a military guy or not, or have been, somewhere in that workforce or whatever. You can't just make something and expect people to like say, "Oh, we're going to keep you because of this and everything else." So, I mean, it's very complicated, especially since it was the first season. So it's not too bad that he was voted out second. I'm just saying if he was brought back, which I don't think he ever wants to play again because he probably, at the end, he was basically begging to get voted off, which, of his stay. So I don't think he'll ever play again, but if he were to play again, he would have to be more social with the people and more interactive with them in order to stay. The third person, sorry that I'm looking at my phone so much, but I have to, was Stacy. Now, Stacy, I don't think, she did bad or anything. Like, I mean, it wasn't, that she was off or anything. I just think that, she was like the odd man out of that group. Like, I know Gretchen in this list was an odd man, and when you're the odd man trying to get in, it's very hard to culminate with that. But at least they didn't stop trying. They didn't lie down and say stuff. The early people in this cast, especially, are honestly probably forgettable. I mean, because you don't get to spend very much time with them, and their gameplay doesn't mirror the gameplay as it is now. So I find it very hard to actually critique the people before the merge because they didn't really play that much of a game. But moving on to Joel, he was just voted out because first off, I think he irritated a few people, and you don't want to do that. But he was also voted off because he was strong, and there was the alliance that picked him off. I believe. Actually, no, it was not the alliance that picked him off. Excuse me. It was just because he was being a little bit too aggressive. And then you get to Greg, which is what I actually remember because it's very hard to remember the first boots. But Greg, he was actually voted off because of the alliance as soon as they merged, because he's too strategic. Strategic. Sorry. He was too aggressive because Richard saw him as a threat. Which, since Richard's like the first one that started actually playing the way the game was supposed to be played, I can't tell you in rewatching the season how many times I was like, oh, can somebody actually play the game that it was played? Like I was just watching. I was like, who's gonna make the first move, and who's gonna finally see that it needs to be played in a certain way, and that's great. But Richard saw that Greg was a threat, so he got rid of him pretty fast, and that's what you're supposed to do: see your threats, and if you can, get rid of them. And the challenges in this season were like basic survival challenges. So they were like extremely physical. Only a couple of them were mental. I think actually there was maybe two that were maybe three. But definitely two, because I remember the bug one. The bug one's definitely mental. And the square one, like a chessboard, is definitely, mental. And you need to definitely see that because the guy's smart, not only that in Greg, but he's also physical. So if most of the challenges are physical and you're seeing that, you need to get rid of him now, because if you don't, he's gonna continue to be a nuisance. So I mean, that alliance of four, basically just of Kelly, Rich, and Sue and Rudy, were basically just like, well, we need to get rid of you because you're not a good thing for us. So that's why he got voted out pretty early. Jenna, um, was just a casualty of that because they took advantage of Sean in his whole lettering thing and basically made it to where they needed the extra vote to get rid of her, and they basically just abused that because they knew he was going to vote in a certain order. And it was like, why? If you know they're going to do that and you don't want to send Jenna home, why did you do that? I mean, I get that this entire cast had like a thing with playing fair and being, being interactive and everything, but I mean, it's just awful to think that he, did that to stay fair. I mean, if you know you want to play this game to win, you gotta play smart, not alphabetically, shoot someone off. I just found that very irritating, and I haven't watched all the seasons, but up until the point, that has got to be the dumbest move of the entire season, going by alphabet. And no one ever does that on Survivor, ever. That, people only, as the seasons go on, get more strategic. They're not going to just go randomly and say, oh, I want to vote this person up. If you ever go on the show, you shouldn't do that. That's just, you'll get voted out either for being, incompetent for going that way, or you'll get voted out because you're like so strategic the other way. But I mean, no one ever goes by that anymore because it won't work. And then I believe it's Jarvis because of the alliance again. I mean, this alliance stuck together. They finally found the rules of this game, and they found it before anyone else did. And by the time people were okay with backstabbing each other, I mean, it was like they were the first ones to move, and then everyone else just stood still and said, we're just going to let this happen. Now, Jarvis, he's a nice guy. He comes back in Blood versus Water. He does do better. I mean, he got out on day 30, and he makes it all the way to, I think, day 39 in Blood versus Water. I mean, I will make a video on that season, obviously, for doing the history, and that's obviously a better margin than day 30, but I also think that there needs to be a thing in the clause of signing the Survivor contract, and this has nothing to do with his gameplay, because actually sitting back and watching them do things, not causing too much of a ruckus, was actually a very good idea, and and a very smart one. But for a guy who can't swim, like, he can swim, but he can't swim very well. I just find it interesting that he signed up for Survivor where he had to know there was, something he had to swim at. So, I mean, it was just funny. I'm going, great. And then you have Jarvis beat Kelly in an immunity challenge. That involves water, and she's a rower, so that was, interesting. And I think it's a testimony to how even the game of Survivor is. I mean, even in season 1, you can see that it's already even among the players, and no one gets a certain advantage that others don't get, and that it's not going to be, not going to be fair. It's going to be totally fair because anyone can do these challenges. I mean, there's a little bit of age discrepancy towards the challenges because the older you get, the harder it is for you to do things. But as far as swimming and not swimming and having rowing experience and all that goes to show that anyone can play this game if they want to and they fight hard enough for it. So that's a good thing. And I think that's why, millions of people watch it every week, is because it's new. Everyone from every walk of life can play this game, and that proves that they can play it. So my hat's off to Jarvis for lasting that long, even though he couldn't swim or had to learn how to adapt, and finally decide to, be okay with the whole alliance thing, because I believe his vote out in this one helped him in season 27, I believe. 27, I think. And he was finally when he came back, he was finally comfortable with alliances. He saw that's the way it was supposed to be played, and he wasn't, he didn't complain about it. And his vote reflected that, because, he wasn't voting for the person he thought was the nicest person. He was voting, for the person who brought a more strategic game and everything else. So that, I believe, my hats go off to him for that. And then Scene. I thought he was called Sean, but if I messed up his name, well, I'm sorry, and I apologize for that. I'll probably hear it for it in the comments, because I messed up his name. But he was just a sitting duck at that point. By the time he said, "I'm going to play, I'm going to win immunity, I'm going to do all of this," and he became a casualty of Kelly winning immunity, because I believe, or maybe it was Rich. I think it was Kelly, but yeah, he became a casualty of the wrong person winning the immunity, because they were going to vote the either Kelly or Rich off. I'll have to go back and look at that, and I'll make a comment in the comments about that. But yeah, he became a casualty of that, but he played way too late. I mean, nice guy, and I wish he came back to play, because he probably learned a few things from the first time out, which is why season 1's probably a high returning rate for many people, because they played the first game and no one really knew how to play. So I believe, that was, a thing, and that it's very interesting how season 1's player rate was bigger than anyone else. Then came Susan, and that's because Rudy and Kelly and Rich were close together, and it just became at that point a 3-on-1, and I think that whoever won immunity, because I think that Rich won that one. I think that's my confusion on this too, but Rich won that one, so there wasn't really. It was either going to be a tie, and you go to and you don't you go to a tie, and you draw purple rocks, which weren't available at this point, and then, or you would have gone to you would have got to votes, but nobody wants to have that be a chance, because I doubt they can't, even if the tie at this point was counting votes. I believe that no one wants this game to come down to a tie, because it's just awful when it does. So I believe that's why Kelly went along with that. And I believe the memory game that they played of people's, trimates during this for immunity this time, was very telling of who paid attention to the jury the most, because you're out here 39 days if you want to get to the end of this game, and you better pay attention to people, because that could help you, and that could also help you get jury votes. The very good winners of this game paid attention to people. I mean, Rich didn't pay that much attention to their personal life, but he did pay attention to their actions and how they acted, and the way they, the way they said things, and their personalities and everything. And if he saw them to be a problem, he got rid of them. but he also, wasn't in their face about it. He was, he was cocky as a camera, but as far as, analyzing people goes, he did a very good job at analyzing what they thought and how they acted so that he could have an upper hand on all of them. Especially since he took Rudy to the end, which he promised he'd do it. And I mean, it wasn't the exact end, and Rudy would say that, probably those final two seats, even if that was the promise. But here's the thing with the final two seats, and usually in upcoming years, it's the final three seats. But even that, you don't want someone sitting there that is so nice with the jury that they'll get all the votes because they're just a nice person. And I believe that's a very big indicator in these first 7 seasons, is that the jury votes for who they like more, not who played the better game. And except for maybe this one, because Rich pulls this out by one vote. But I find the jury more leaning on who played a nice game, not who played the best game, which in some cases is very interesting, and in other cases very irritating. Watching this back and going, "Oh, I'm glad that for the most part we don't have bitter juries on Survivor than we do on some other shows, because I don't want the person who played the best game to be utterly ousted because they weren't nice enough to do it. I mean, you have to be somewhat respectful, but not not totally rude, like some contestants. Not naming any names yet because we haven't gotten to that point, but yes, those will be named. Respectfully, of course, because I respect all the players that play this game. But you have to be nice to other people, but you can't be so nice that it just looks like you didn't play a good enough game and you were just there because you played, you didn't get on anyone's nerves. That's not any fun to watch. And if there's someone that got there in a better way, then I say the hat's off to them for it. And I hope you guys agree with me on that, because it's just a lot more entertaining. And I said I wasn't going to rank this on entertaining in the seasons, and I wasn't going to do the history on contestants and how entertaining they were. But it's just more pleasant to watch someone win that struggled to get there or fought to get there, not who was dragged there because they were nice. So that brings us up to Richard, or not Richard, Rudy, who in the final 3, he let his hand go, which I feel really bad for the guy, because he sat there with his hand on the pole because it was a challenge to get the hand to keep your hand on the pole, and he let it go, and it was so aggravating to watch. It was like, you've got to be kidding me, dude. Keep your hand on the pole, because I find it very interesting, especially in the early seasons. This is only season 1, and I've only watched 2 and 8 of the early seasons, but I bet you there's an endurance challenge like this in the first couple seasons every time the final 3, because it's physical, and that's what I like about Survivor. It's more physical than other things, other competitions. It's who can survive, and they were technically testing their patience and how long they could just be patient for it, and how long their brain could work for that long. And it's very interesting that they lasted about 2.5 hours. Rich decides to step off before that because he thinks that both people will take him, because they know they can't beat each other, or that's what they think. So he's very inclined to do that because he knows that he's got a shot either way. So he's like, I'm gonna step off this thing, and then Rudy just just slightly loses his hand an hour later, and it's like, oh, dude, you could have won this game if you didn't do that, because they would have voted for Rudy if he was in the final two, hands down, because he's a nice guy, and this was was a big statement on the nice jury and how that was to be perceived. So I really think that was a very important moment and a very important hand move that that happened, and it's such a shame that happened. But but he stuck to it and gave Richard his vote. Because he said he'd stick by him, which I find to be a very honorable guy and a very good person. Even though he didn't really get what he wanted, so hats off to him for that. And then it came down to the final two of Kelly and Richard. And the reason Richard actually won is because this cast slightly respected gameplay over personal, which I respect, because I like the guy who wins and has gameplay and maybe some personal stuff. But you see that evolve in today's game to be a more respectful gameplay. But in these first couple of seasons, that was an anomaly, I think, because it was always who is the nice guy, as far as I can tell. I mean, I haven't watched season 3 yet, but it was always who's the nicer, who's the better. Now it's evolved into who's done the better gameplay, who's done the better strategic play, and hats off to that, because I can't stand it any other way, really. I mean, I'll watch it, but I'd much rather it be the other way. But what Sue did at the end, at the end of her jury questioning, was, to me, just a sort of loser. I mean, I like Sue. Sue's a great character. She's witty. She's funny. She's a bunch of, she's a bunch of fun stuff. But but I just can't stand that sort of play. And whenever I see something like that, I'm going to point it out. I mean, this is the history, and hopefully, through the history, I'll see juries that are respectful, juries that are nice and at least civil. But the fact that she said all those things, that was a little over the top, and it just was awful to look at. And thank goodness we have 39 to 40 seasons of the show to get through, because I think you'll see as the seasons progress that will happen less and less. I mean, it'll reach a peak of that and then go down, because I believe that as the game evolved, so did its players and the way that we know we have to play this game. Because if you sign up for this game, you expect to be outwitted, outplayed, and outmatched. And if you don't expect that, well, then you shouldn't be playing. But yeah, so I think that Richard winning was great, because if he didn't win, I don't think there'd be another 39 seasons, because the way he won, he laid out the strategic, gameplay plate of the whole Survivor franchise, and not only that, but the whole strategic gameplay of the rest of reality television competitions. And I think without him, we wouldn't have the games we have today. Because no one even in this season, until much later, thought of, oh, let's get an alliance together. Oh, let's do this. Let's do that. Let's mess with a few things. But, no one thought of that, which until he thought of it, which was great. Now, could he come back and win again eventually? No, I don't think he can. Because he his gameplay strategy, first off, had no idols in it, so he'd have to learn how to play with idols. Had no, had no like backup strategies for what if this doesn't work. I mean, he was analyzing, but he wasn't like seeing, oh, if this works and if that works, what what's gonna happen here. So I find it to be very hard for him to win again. And you'll see that in season 8 when we get there. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. Most of you guys have probably already seen it and everything, but since I've seen that season 8 a lot of times, we'll definitely talk a lot about that season. In fact, that one might be an hour or so, because I have a lot to talk about, and I will buy 5 episodes for that season, as with any other seasons past season 3, so I can do a better job of analyzing the cast and how they did things. But for the first 2, I'm just going to give a brief overview of how the game started and and everything else, because I just didn't keep track of all the stats and stuff. But I will definitely keep track of the stats for seasons 3 through onward, and I'll try to put images so that you guys can see those stats and everything else. But for right now, that's going to be the end of season 1. So going into season 2, it's the Australian outback, and I honestly think that the survival gets harder, gets more challenging, gets more daunting. And I think that was the goal of the production, to have it go to a much more, grueling environment, and see what they had to do. The gameplay jumps up by 1,000,000%, because people are actually starting to play in alliances. They get the idea of things, not right away, but they're starting to not feel as betrayed by alliances, or or weary of them to where they're an evil thing. So I think the gameplay jumps up from here to here. So it's a great thing. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. I'll probably either record that tonight or later. But I can't wait to talk to you guys about it, because it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a totally different season. And we're going to see how the game evolves from season 2. And season 2 also, I'll have to check, but season 2, I think, has the most returning players for season 8, which is the first returning player season. So that speaks volumes to how great that cast is, and how much they've evolved from that point, and how many good characters come out of the season. I mean, there's a lot of good characters, and they've all progressed the game in some way, shape, or form. So I can't wait to talk about them, especially the 6 or 7 that I have in my mind right now that I could talk about in this video, but I'm not going to, because you guys all have to watch the next one. So anyway, subscribe, view the video, spread the word that I'm starting this YouTube channel, and for now, guys, that's all I'm going to say. See you guys later. I'm Will, and stay in the real reality. Bye.